had their catch. Elena did not panic. She simply reached into her oilskin jacket and felt for the laminated card that would change everything. As the Coast Guard's rigid hull inflatable boat pulled alongside, 4 armed officers scrambled aboard the Maria Celeste. Their leader, a burly chief petty officer with sun-scarred skin, placed a heavy hand on the railing and announced the inspection. "By authority of the United States Coast Guard, we are seizing this vessel for suspected illegal activity. You have the right to remain silent." 2 officers immediately moved toward the cabin while another began checking the fish holds. Elena stood perfectly still by the wheelhouse door. The chief asked for her registration and license. She handed over the standard documents without a word. He scanned them, frowned, and then signaled his men to continue the search. They found nothing illegal, no drugs, no hidden compartments, no extra passengers. But the chief was not satisfied. He pointed at her navigation equipment and said it looked modified. Then he claimed her logs were incomplete. In his mind, the absence of evidence was not evidence of innocence. He was determined to take the boat in for a full forensic inspection, a process that could take months and ruin her financially. The chief took a step closer, his boots squeaking on the wet deck. "Ma'am, I'm placing you under temporary detainment while we tow your vessel to the nearest port. You will be processed there." He reached for a pair of handcuffs on his belt. That was when Elena moved. She did not flinch or shout. She simply reached into her jacket, pulled out a black leather wallet, and flipped it open. Inside was a military identification card with her photograph, a holographic seal, and the words, "Special Forces, Maritime Operations Group." The chief's hand froze halfway to the cuffs. His eyes widened. He looked at the card, then at her face, then back at the card. The 2 officers behind him stopped rummaging through the cabin. The 4th man, who had been about to cut the tow line, let the knife drop to his lap. For a long 5 seconds, nobody spoke. The only sound was the slapping of waves against the hull. The chief finally whispered, "Ma'am, we had no idea." Elena closed the wallet and tucked it back into her jacket. Her voice was low but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Chief, now you are conducting a lawful patrol. I respect that. But this vessel is not a smuggler's boat. It is an active, classified asset of the Maritime Operations Group. Every time I go dark at night, every modified system you see, it's by design. We run simulations to test coastal response times. Your reaction today will be logged in a report." The chief's face turned pale beneath his tan. He realized he had nearly detained an active-duty Special Forces operator running a covert readiness drill. His men looked at each other, unsure whether to salute or apologize. Elena allowed a small smile. She explained that for the past 18 months, she had been posing as a struggling independent fisherman to see how easily a hostile force could move along the coast undetected. Her real mission was to identify gaps in maritime security. The Coast Guard had just failed one of her tests, not by stopping her, but by nearly seizing the wrong vessel without proper intelligence. Back on the cutter, the commanding officer received a secure call from Elena's superiors. He listened, nodded stiffly, and then ordered his boarding team to withdraw immediately. The chief returned to Elena's boat one last time, hat in hand. He apologized formally and asked if there was anything he could do. Elena told him there was one thing. Learn to trust his gut, but verify with facts. She said a real smuggler would have panicked, run, or fought. She had done none of those things. She had stood calmly because she knew her story would hold. The chief nodded, saluted, and climbed back into his inflatable boat. As the cutter pulled away, Elena started her engine and resumed her patrol. She had one more week of simulation before reporting back to base. The report she would file tonight would recommend additional training for boarding teams on identifying false positives. It would also praise the chief's aggression, just not his follow-through. 6 months later, Elena sat in a debriefing room at a naval base. Across the table was the same chief petty officer, now promoted and assigned to a joint training program. He thanked her for the lesson. He admitted that for weeks after the incident, he could not sleep without replaying the moment he reached for those handcuffs. Elena told him that was good. That discomfort would save lives someday. She then pulled out a new set of orders. She was being reassigned to train Coast Guard and Navy boarding teams on covert vessel identification, and the chief would be her senior enlisted liaison. They shook hands. Outside the window, the Maria Celeste sat in dry dock, its engine overhauled and its hull repainted. It would soon be used to train the next wave of officers. And somewhere along the coast, a new operator was already pretending to be a simple fisherman, waiting to see who would stop her and who would freeze.